Good notification on Twitter generally means it's a good thing. Live there, just waiting for YouTube to go live. Come on. YouTube always takes the longest. There we go. Live on YouTube. Let's do it. G'day and welcome back to another episode of the Keeper League podcast. We're the AFL fantasy podcast that doesn't talk about the superstars. We only talk about the lesser knowns and the players who will bring value to your draft and Keeper League teams. I'm your host Heff, and today I am joined by Tom Wyman. How are you, mate?
Good, thanks. Good to be back.
How's life down in Victor Harbour treating you, mate?
Oh, she's bloody cold down there, but yeah, no, it's good. It's a lovely part of the world. So
For those interstate listeners,
we're dealing with the weather.
Fleurieu Peninsula?
Fleurieu Peninsula.
All the beaches. What else you got down there? A few wineries?
A few wineries
Things
down
like that.
McLaren sort of way.
Yeah.
But yeah, it does get a bit cold.
You're the sportsman down there?
Yep, and the local paper down
local
there.
rag. Yep, so no, it's a nice part of the world. But anyway, let's not talk about our lives and day jobs. How'd the fantasy team go on the weekend?
Oh, pretty average. Had a very average season, to be honest. So yeah, we won't talk about that too much, I hope.
Who was your superstar? Surely it's your boy Jordan Dawson.
How good! He's really taken his game to another level this year. It's been fantastic for the Crows' perspective and their fantasy perspective.
We won't talk about too many things from the Crows' perspective this week because I think you're in a bit of a pissed off mood. Is that correct?
Oh well, yeah, pretty much. But the Collingwood juggernaut rolls on, doesn't it? So good on them.
I saw a stat. What Collingwood have beaten you twice by a total of 4 points or something like that?
Yeah, and then I reckon it's 3 times they've beaten us by less than, by not much at all. I remember Nick Dacos put on an absolute clinic in the wet last year.
Yeah.
And then, this year they were in front for 30 seconds.
Yeah,
and
that's
the Crows lost it. But and then again, but that's just Collingwood, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's football, really.
Yeah, it is,
happens.
unfortunately.
Yeah. Do you reckon the Crows make the finals?
I don't know.
Seeing a lot of ladder predictors coming out now and stuff, and they just kind of just outside.
Yeah,
but I haven't really looked.
Oh, it'll be touch and go. I reckon showdown will be massive, always is, but it'll be really big because Port will be obviously looking for top spot probably.
Yeah,
and the Crows will be pushing for finals. I don't know. I think from the competition perspective, it would be best if we did because we do play a really good round of footy. But I don't know. We may just miss out.
All right. Well, this isn't the Crows podcast, so we probably should stop talking about them because, I probably will never live it down if I did turn into a Crows podcast. So let's get stuck into it. But before we do, I just wanted to mention that this show today is brought to you by Game Day Squad. Create, coach, and compete in fantasy footy. If you've never played it before, you open digital packs and get digital cards to make your team instead of selecting players from a player pool. I guess if you've ever played foot or FIFA, it's a very similar type concept, and you get different cards that are worth different amounts of points and things like that. So you also get free cards for logging in each week. So make sure you jump on board, have a play. Getting on in the season, but you can still make a team. Still lots of weekly prizes to actually win just by collecting your cards and also getting your team set for and ready for next year to compete if you haven't done so already. Anyways, it's fun. It's free. It's easy. Head to gamedaysquad.com.au to check it all out. I do my pack openings on Wednesday nights. You been watching a few?
Yeah, get the little notification when you go live and whatnot. So it's good.
I'm glad that they actually come through. I think it's either this week or next week I'm doing something a little bit different. But regardless, each week I'm giving away lots of packs on the live stream. So I think I'm giving away 3 common packs a week. And if I've been winning, like if you finish in the top 20, you get a free unique pack each week. But because the Game Day Squad supply me with packs, I've just been giving those away. Finished 20th this week, so I got another unique pack to give away on the live stream this week. So make sure you're tuning in. Get your hands on live stream.
Stay tuned.
You got to get on there, Tommy. You're missing out.
Actually. I actually need to get on there. I've been saying it every time I come on, but I actually do.
Well, just get on the stream, win yourself a pack. That'll entice you.
Yeah,
Spin the wheel every Wednesday night. Everyone's favourite moment. All right, let's get stuck into the most relevant names of the week. We'll go match by match this week. And these are just the guys that put up good scores, but aren't the superstars of fantasy football. First up, I'm tipping the cap to Gary Rowan, 102 points, 3 goals. Lucky they won because he took out Jeremy Cameron in the process. Did you see this game?
Yeah, I did. It was great. It was probably one of the best games I've seen him play. It's obviously been pretty heavily criticised over his career for maybe not standing up when it really matters.
Yep.
But no, he was awesome. Yeah, really, really good, and shows how damaging he can be.
Wouldn't be one you're picking in your fantasy side though.
Oh, I wouldn't go that far.
No.
But it's still a great game from him.
Yeah, it was.
Good on you, Gary.
All right, guys, we probably do have a bit of a fantasy game going forward. Tanner Bruin, I feel like we mention him every second week. He was actually on fire against Port Adelaide the week before, but got injured. And this week he's played most of the game, played the whole game, and got 84 points. He's definitely a midfielder of the future. It's just whether he becomes too good for this podcast anytime soon. Depends on his consistency, right?
Yeah, I mean, as you say, he's always been mentioned sort of around the mark. It's just really, I think, a matter of him getting midfield minutes consistently.
Yeah.
Because, we all know what he can do. And I wouldn't be surprised if sort of next year he starts to be a bit too good for the podcast, to be honest.
I reckon.
But it really is a role thing for him. I really like him as a player. Geelong's just lured another one home. So, good for them. But it looks like he's going to be a really strong player for the Cats for heaps of years to come.
Yeah, absolutely. It was a good pickup. I was sceptical at first. Like, when I first saw him, I just thought he was probably a little bit soft, a little bit, not tough enough to play that inside role well, but he's developed so much and become a good player. So.
I mean, he's not like a physically imposing sort of midfielder, like many of them are.
Yeah, soft's probably not the right word, but just probably wasn't.
He's always been able to hold his own.
Yeah.
That's never really been a problem ever since his junior days. So, that's starting to come to fruition now at AFL level.
Yeah, absolutely. He's definitely one to put in your black books for the future. Probably stop talking about him until he, does something big, I reckon. But Tanner Bruin, I think we've said enough about that guy. Jack Bowes returned as the sub this week, but came on when Jeremy Cameron went out at the end of the first quarter, essentially. Had 48% of the CBAs when coming on, so only scored 54 points, but that's a watch, I reckon, because that midfield just seems a little bit depleted with Dangerfield out at the moment. I think there's someone else missing in there too, but
It was interesting they pushed him in there into the midfield rotation. I actually really like it. He played a lot of his junior footy on the ball.
Yeah.
Up at Gold Coast as well, but then sort of half back was his spot. I actually like him on ball. He was a really, really good junior, really good point scorer as a junior in an inside midfield role. So, I don't know if he gets it there permanently at Geelong because, his skills are probably, really good on the outside. He's probably lends himself to more of a half-back role like he has been playing. But, I suppose the midfield is in a bit of crisis at Geelong and they're a bit weak down there. So worth a crack in there, and he scored okay without really setting the world alight.
Do you get the feeling that Jack Bowes might be one of those types that's a bit of a jack of all trades, master of none?
Yeah, I reckon so. I actually think, his kicking's is pretty good. It'd be probably his best trait, but it's probably not elite. So I don't reckon he's got a real damage to him.
Yeah, he seems like one of those players that they just throw around.
Yeah,
and, he'll play a roll down back, can play forward even.
Yeah,
even in the
midfield,
midfield,
wing,
kind of like James Harms or something like that. Probably play him as a tagger as well, maybe.
Yeah, I think. Sort of forgotten about him, to be quite honest, since he moved to Geelong. Just really, I guess he struggled for form and really get a crack in this side. But if there's a time for him to break in, it's now, to be honest.
Absolutely. He's got the opportunity coming up now. Now he's back in the side and getting a bit of a run, so albeit as the sub this week. We'll move on to the Friday night game. Not a lot to talk about here. Josh Battle put up a reasonable score, 79 points. He's such an almost player. I think he's pretty much resigned to being more of a key defender these days, but I don't know. He's got a lot of flair about him, and he can do a lot of freaky things for a taller player.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on Battle?
His aerial work's awesome. I really like him in the air. I recall him being a really good endurance athlete, I think, as well.
Okay.
So one that can get up.
Well,
the
he did
ground.
play in the midfield a bit.
He's almost like he's a little bit like Rewalt in that he's got a big tank and he's a bit taller, but he's sort of always been a key position player.
Yeah.
But one that really could. I reckon Rewalt could have played inside mid pretty comfortably.
Yeah, true.
Battle probably could too, but he won't.
Yeah.
I think because St Kilda just need a bit of help down there. But, he's an almost player. It's a bit frustrating sometimes.
Almost in fantasy.
Yeah.
And probably an almost in real footy as well.
I think both, to be quite honest. He definitely has a bit of upside left in him, both fantasy and actual in reality. So, an almost player.
Well, looking at a similar, looking at the other end of the ground, Harris Andrews, 110 points. I just think he's a player worth owning as a streamer option. Nothing more, nothing less. But when he has games like this, taking 14 marks and just watching the game, it's so noticeable that just everything was just ending up in his hands. And I guess, I don't know, is that to say St Kilda's key tools aren't that great? I don't know, because they're not that bad. Like, King's a pretty good player. I guess they are a bit depleted up there. They're playing, Caminiti? I can never say his name. Up there as well. I don't know. But Harris Andrews, when he has games like this or good matchups, he'll take a shitload of marks and just score heaps of points. Yeah,
like, sometimes he pops up with these sort of games where he just, like, absolutely takes a mickey down bat. And, yeah, like you said, he just seems to mark everything. He's always there. He's got really good hands. And then, like, he just passes around the back and scores actually really well. So I wouldn't mind him as an option is quite decent, actually. Yeah. He's not the conventional point scorer, but...
I wouldn't feel comfortable starting him in each week, but it's worth owning. Worth owning.
Worth having there because he is capable of scoring really well. He just needs the ball in his hand with the marks, and then he does tend to score pretty well.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll touch on the rookies in this game because they were quite big classic targets this week. Jasper Fletcher, 49 points. What are your thoughts on him as an outside type, as a long-term prospect?
Yeah, I really like him as a long-term prospect. Scored really well as a junior. There's nothing to suggest he won't sort of translate to AFL level.
Was he an outside player as a junior as well, like a winger?
Yeah, he was. Patches of inside, and I think there's potential there to sort of move inside, but also keep a bit of that outside polish that he has. But he's a really good ball user and has a good blend of speed and damage on the outside. So that's sort of where he's played a lot of football there for the Allies and the national champs, and that's where he sort of rocketed into first round sort of calculations. But obviously with Ashcroft in the same draft year, he sort of just got overlooked a little bit.
Shadowed him a bit.
Which is probably not a bad thing for Jasper, to be quite honest.
Fly under the radar.
Yeah, it really did. But obviously clubs rated him really highly still. But yeah, as a long-term prospect, really like him.
All right. Well, Kyle Lohmann's the other one I think a lot of people brought in last week. He only had 27 points. Do you know much about his underage career?
Yeah, Lohmann's, he's sort of he's a really a freakish sort of player forward of the ball.
Yeah.
He's a little bit like Waitman in that he's not a small forward that does all of his work on the ground. He can actually really fly as well.
Yeah.
I really like that about him. He can damage you in the air and on the ground. In terms of point scoring, I don't think he's ever been sort of a really dominant scorer.
Yeah.
But he's one that sort of probably relies on a couple of goals a game to really get a good score.
Yeah.
And we haven't really seen him. I haven't really had a good look at his VFL scores with the Lions, but he doesn't strike me as a player that would be a consistent point scorer.
No, I just wanted to reiterate that and get your opinion on that as well and double it down, because you get these players that have a bit of classic hype because of their price, and then people who don't pay super, a lot of attention and play a draft or a keeper league, they go, everyone's talking about Kyle Lohmann, I'll pick him up type thing. So a bit of a just...
he's not a noted point scorer. That's
exactly. He's only in people's teams at the moment because of his price in classic, really. All right, moving on to the next game, which was an absolute drubbing. I don't think... I've got a few West Coast players to actually talk about, but yeah, the good players on that side are few and far between at the moment. But we'll start with the Sydney Swans. Angus Sheldrick. I don't know. He had under 11 points. Can I make him too good for the podcast?
Yeah, just about. So
you automatically qualify if you get 3 80-plus scores in a row, but he had a 79 in round 13, so didn't quite get there. This was his biggest game in terms of time on ground, so I think he's been in the 50% last few weeks, and we've been talking about he's a points per minute player. If he just gets time on ground, he'll rack them up. In this game, there was tackles, there was goals, there was everything that he does well, I guess. Do you think this maintains? I think I've been asking the same question each week for the last 3 weeks with all my guests, and everyone seems to think it will. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think it will as well. Like, I don't see there's been too many reasons why he can't.
Mills was subbed out of this game.
Yeah,
so
of course.
Help him
of course. Mills is obviously he's a glaring omission in that midfield.
Yeah.
But that's Sheldrick. He's always been a impact per possession sort of player. When he's out there, he's the best on ground just about all of his junior games and whatnot. So. He's so powerful. Like Sydney have found a really good one here. I remember when they drafted him. I reckon it was the end of first round, and he's sort of jumped up a little bit on people's expectations of where he'd be picked. But they'd be pretty happy with that, I reckon. He's a pretty explosive sort of player. So yeah, I reckon he can turn into a really good fantasy player.
I reckon I've mentioned this hard luck story 3 weeks in a row now, but dropped him off my rookie list because I just thought he'd take a while. I thought I'd have another chance to redraft him because they're playing him as like a small forward at AFL level and VFL too. They're actually playing him lower.
That's really not his go.
And that's why I was like, well, if they're trying to develop, there's no chance of him getting around the midfield. I might as well drop him back to the pool. He's come out into the midfield and he's been awesome. Yeah. The junior fantasy scoring was huge as well.
Yeah, it was. And he's probably one that's benefited from Sydney's sort of, I guess it's been a poor year so far. Yeah. Injuries have played a big role. Yeah. But unearthing him is probably a big positive.
Hayden McLean is a player that I like, kind of like a Harris Andrews streamer type, maybe to a lesser extent, maybe a loophole. But the fact that, we scored 106 points on the weekend, I think he kicked a few goals. So there's a West Coast factor here. So a lot of these scores are inflated, don't get me wrong. But he's just a player that manages to pad his score with hit-outs. So he had 17 in this game. Obviously kicked 3 goals in this game. Buddy Franklin was out. What's even happening with Buddy? I have not been following.
I'm not sure what's going on with Buddy, but to be honest, I reckon it's probably unpopular, but Sydney's forward line, I reckon they work a bit better without Buddy.
I don't think you're the only one who thinks that. I think that's been said a few times.
I think so as well. Like, they just seem to function better. I actually really like McLean as a player. So every time I watch the Swans game, I reckon that McLean is involved in it. I reckon he plays pretty well.
Yeah.
So I reckon he's one that's just waiting for Buddy to, hang him up. Yeah. And he'll take on a bigger role, I guess.
Well, I guess on the same mould, Tom Hickey. So he's the number 1 ruck at the moment. He's 30 plus. What is he, 32?
He'd be getting on a bit now.
Yeah, I don't even know how old he is, but I think he's just because he's been around for so long. Surely he's in like his twilight of his career. My thoughts, I guess, with him, he scored 90 points. That was a good game, but West Coast, who cares? Just thinking, Peter Laddams is only 1 to 2 away, I think, when the AFL injury list comes out next week. What do you think happens there? Who takes the number 1 ruck? Do they run with McLean as the backup? Do they play both of them? What do you think?
That'd be interesting. I reckon Laddams comes back in.
Yeah.
Because I really like McLean's work forward of the ball. I think he's he's a good forward.
Yeah.
So I don't reckon they'll want to lose that too much. It might depend when Buddy returns as well.
So do you think Hickey might go out for Laddams?
Maybe. I reckon he gives a little bit more than Hickey. Hickey, is he going to be in the next premiership side? Well, maybe, because they do have a good squad and they can easily turn it around next year. But
I feel like Hickey's gone at the end of this year.
Yeah, they probably could do a little bit better with him. I know he's a great.
He's better in the taps, like the actual hit out.
He's one of stuff like that. But around the ground, Laddams' work is he's a really good mobile ruckman, Laddams.
Yeah. Oh no, it's just gonna be interesting to see what happens. Yeah, I think they might roll with Laddams just because I feel like he's the future. But
that's my thinking.
Yeah, but it'll be interesting to see because again, if they're in contention and a chance of playing finals, which I haven't even looked at the ladder. Where are Sydney at the moment? They're in that glut that are just outside the.
They're in. Yeah, they are exactly. Yeah. There's a couple of sides that could take the last couple of spots.
Yeah, they're probably not going to be one of them. So I think given that they're not contending, they'll probably roll with someone for the future like Laddams. But just thinking that Laddams might be a good waiver pickup even if he's been dropped back as well over the next few weeks. Justin McInerney had 91 points. Again, West Coast factor as a winger, and he kicked 3 goals. So I'm not really reading that much into it, but I just noticed he's averaging 85 from his last 3, which does coincide with Dylan Stevens going outside. Dylan Stevens has been smashing it at VFL level, though. They can't keep him back too long.
He's too good for the VFL.
Yeah. I don't know. It's reminded me of when Jordan Dawson used to absolutely rack it up in the NEFL. It's kind of similar type thing.
He used to have games like he did on the weekend for the Crows in the NEFL as well, didn't he?
Yeah, exactly.
He did.
So anyway, moving on to the few West Coast players. Jack Petrocelli has been playing a lot of roles over the last few weeks. So he had 70 points this week. I think he had 80 the week before. But this week he was playing on the halfback flank. So he's been getting stints in the midfield. Forward, obviously, that's where he does play as well. But now, along that halfback line, it's just interesting he's a player that suits that halfback role, I think, just given his pace, like
his speed's massive.
Yeah, like an Adam Sard type thing. So he just have a look. He might turn into a half reasonable scorer if that role continues. So.
Yeah, they just got to give him a license to run.
Yeah,
use
exactly.
Pace and use a bit of flair. Take the game on. Nothing to lose. Can't get any worse. So, in terms of West Coast perspective. So I like that role. Like I said, he's been playing in the midfield a little bit, just giving him a bit of flair, getting a few CBAs here and there, but halfback this week, and it was interesting to see. Yeah.
Sorry.
Let's face it, the ball's going to be down there most of the game. So
absolutely.
That helps as well.
Given he's a forward as well, that's just one to think about on your lists. Elijah Hewitt, 47 points, nothing to write home about, but did have 54% of the CBAs. So good indicator there that they're looking to get some of these youngsters in the middle and give them some experience.
Yeah, that's good. And he's a talent. Like I remember at the start of his draft year, he was touted as a top 5 pick potentially. Faded a little bit, was still picked early, and he's a pure midfielder, and it's good to see him getting some game time into him because that's what these next couple of years are going to be about for West Coast.
Yeah, developing these kids and getting some high-end talent in, that's for sure. Moving on to the Fremantle game, so the other Western Australian team had a bit of a better night than the West Coast Eagles did. But the player I want to talk about is Liam Henry. He had 118 points, and it's just, I don't know, so for the last 2 years they're saying, Liam Henry's going to move onto the wing, he's going to play wing, he's going to be midfielder. And I guess, is he a forward in fantasy? I think he is still. But it just seemed like he had a big score. What I'm trying to say is let's just not get too carried away with him. It just felt like it was a game where everything just kind of came together for him and he finally just put a good game together. But I just don't know if he can do it week in, week out. Yeah. That's my thoughts.
I didn't watch this game. And then I checked the stats and I saw Liam Henry's stats and it's unreal.
Just
he
felt
had
like
a serious day out, didn't he?
Just running up and down that wing all day, and it just felt like he just kept popping into holes, getting the next one, or it just ended up in his lap a lot of the time.
Yeah, I suppose it's, whether he can keep this up, it's probably not. But, it's still good to see from him because I know he's copped a lot from Freo fans. So he's not the most loved
player. If you're in a league that
there.
plays waivers and you're like in the top range and your priority is like really low, I don't think there's going to be that many bites for Liam Henry. So, if everything else is going throughout the week, given that he's a forward, I think he's a forward because he should be. But he did play a bit of wing last year. But given if he does still have that forward status, he just might be worth a cheeky waiver in case there is something there. Maybe something has clicked. I don't know.
Yeah, well, hopefully it's a breakout for him.
Yeah, I just want to see it again. That's all before I get too excited.
That's obviously the big question for him. Yeah,
can he back it up, or was this flash in the pan? I'm just going to check here whether he actually is a forward. I'm pretty sure he is because I don't know why.
He's played a lot of. I remember as a junior, he played a lot of. He was always sort of touted as a wingman.
Yeah.
So it's nothing new to see him on the wing.
No, he still is still is a forward. I just know he played a bit there in the back end of last year. I just wasn't sure if that was enough to tip him over for this year. But no, still a forward, so that's good. Anyway, moving on to another Fremantle young gun. Matthew Johnson, 99 points. So he got a corky last week where I think he got subbed out with 37. Everyone was panicking. There was warning signs going off, warning bells going off everywhere. But came back into this week and scored 99 points and looked fantastic. Wasn't doing the CBA stuff, so not in the middle of the ground with the ball-ups, but he would roll up to the stoppages and get a few tackles, get a few. He had a lot of uncontested marks around the ground as well, which is really good. So just popping into the right spots to get it to him as well. Thing is though, he had another corky and then sat off half the last quarter too. So, but they reckon he's right to play this week. Freo are showing faith and playing him in the midfield. I think he's good to go.
Yeah, it's good. It's good to see guys like him and Erasmus getting cracks as well. Johnson's a really, really talented non-baller. I remember him. Yeah, in his draft year, he faded a bit. I don't think he got picked in on night one. It was one of those ones where he went to the draft.
Yeah, okay.
And didn't get picked, which is a bit awkward.
Wait around for the next
always
night.
A bit awkward, but. Good on him. It's good to see. He's always been the talent.
Yeah.
I'm not 100% sure why he slipped, but he's always been a really good talent. And I think, he's part of Freo's starting mid rotation for the future.
Yeah.
Just not yet. But when he's shown he can score without it.
Yeah.
So when
it doesn't need the CBAs. But and like I said, he's just rolling up as a fifth midfielder anyway. So
moving off for half forward and rolling up to stoppages and whatnot.
Yep. So, he looks fine. And I think he's got some fantasy game to him as well. So, he's one to be grabbing off the waiver wires if he's still there. We'll move on to the heartbreak of Sunday that it was for you there, Tommy. Don't really have I've got a few Crows players to talk about, but we'll start with the Collingwood players. They're probably your favourite people in the world right now. But Braden Maynard had 97 points. And that's 2 good scores in a row for him. What do you think's going on there? Is there something different, or has it just been a lucky 2 weeks? What do you think's going on, Maynard?
Well, the Crows really, from large part of the game, they really struggled with the connection between mid and forwards.
Yeah.
And guys like him and Howe and Quaynor, who we're going to speak about shortly, they just cut everything off and just raffled it between them pretty much.
Yeah.
And obviously that's good for a point scoring perspective as well.
Yeah.
But he's one of those guys who just he can turn it on and score really well.
Yeah.
But obviously consistency is the thing.
I wasn't sure if Howe, like, 'cause he did score well last week, Howe coming in because he kind of can play more. Like, Maynard's problem is he has to play lockdown too much and doesn't get off the chain enough. In the last few weeks, it feels like he's, well, just looking at his scores anyway, he's getting off the chain a little bit. So I was wondering if Howe might have helped him a little bit.
Yeah, potentially. Howe was really good. I mean,
so that's another one who's back. So that's another one to be looking at, Howe.
I'm not sure how many marks he took, but he was, he fitted in pretty seamlessly, to be honest.
What did Howe score?
He's intercepted everything.
Jeremy Howe had 82, so he just came back, no worries.
No props at all. And the Crows kicked it to him plenty of times. So I think Maynard's one that can turn it on.
Can he do it 3 weeks in a row?
I think so. I don't see why not.
I think they've got Gold Coast this week, so
it'll be tough. A lot of it will be positional, I reckon, and see who he goes to and whatnot. But he can.
Well, another player, Collingwood player, we have to award 2G4P status to, and that's Isaac Quaynor. So he's had a few good weeks in a row. It's just as if like Collingwood realised he's a good footballer and they should give the ball to him more.
Yeah,
like, it feels like he's always been that.
He has always been one that has really been able to attack well from half-back. Feels like they've just given him the first probably few seasons he's played more as a lockdown player, which he's very good at. But now they're sort of giving him the keys to the half-back line along with Dacos and. He just suits their play really well.
He went at 86% disposal efficiency.
Yeah, that's the thing. Used it really well. Took the game on with his run and carry and didn't lose any of that defensive stuff, which has made him such a good player.
Yeah, Quaynor, too good for the podcast. Congratulations. Well done. He's having a party somewhere celebrating. But
I'm sure he'd be chuffed.
Yeah, definitely. Patrick Lipinski is another one I want to mention. One of the Keeper League favourites. I actually had my mate. My mate messaged me. He lives in London. Can't remember what he was watching, but I don't think he'd heard Rasputin by Boney M before, and he was like, well, how do I know this song? And it turned out it was the Patrick Lipinski song from the Keeper League, so that's how we knew it. So
making an impact.
Shout out to
abroad.
Ben if you're listening this week, mate. But anyway, so Lipinski's back, and he's just working his way into it. Given he's got forward status, could be on a waiver wire. Someone to look at because, I don't think he's going to get too much midfield time like he was touted at the start of last year, but he can score a solid 70 to 80 most weeks playing forwards. So.
Yeah, he's a very solid footballer. Absolutely.
Okay, Isaac Rankin, he had 100 points. So when Kays did his first show of the podcast this year, I think Isaac Rankin started like a house on fire. So he made me 4P him in round 4. Since then, he's just done nothing. But anyway, because I didn't watch any of this game, like I said, I was at Disney on Ice on Sunday afternoon. So how was his game? How was Isaac Rankin's game? And just describe it to us.
Yeah, so it was pretty much when the Crows were on, Rankin was on. So in that third quarter when they kicked, I think it was 8 goals or something like that. Pretty well unanswered. He was really good. I think he had about 10 touches in the kick to goal. Really involved. But then there was patches of play where the Crows went missing and Collingwood were right on top. And Rankin was, he was pretty well invisible, which is not all his fault, I suppose. But but when they were on, he scored really well.
Yeah,
and he can do that. Like he can push up the ground and get involved in the midfield, and he's obviously magical when he gets the ball.
I think we talked about earlier in the season, but it was like you don't want to take him too far away from goal too often.
Yeah, like he's so freakish around goal and so natural around goal that don't want to get him too far up the ground. But also when he is up the ground, he creates stuff. He's a very creative player.
Yeah.
It's a bit of both, I suppose. And the Crows have a few guys that can do that, push up the ground like McHenry and Murphy. So it's really good to see him score some points again because he has his point scoring has dropped off since the start, but his value to the Crows obviously hasn't.
Yeah, absolutely. Tex Walker's the next one. So 97 points, kicked 5 goals. Every All-Australian mock team I've seen doesn't have him in it. Now, admittedly, it's only been 2, I reckon I've seen. What are your thoughts? Is he going to make the All-Australian team this year for the first time? Yeah,
I know. It's weird that he hasn't made the All-Australian team ever.
Yeah. Looking at Texas, like this is a Port supporter. This is me coming out here. Sorry to all the Crow supporters to bring this up, but he's never really won any accolades. So he's never won best and he's deemed a champion, and rightly so. But he's never won any accolade. Never won a best and fairest. Never an All-Australian. Never a Coleman. Never a premiership. Nothing. Does he deserve All-Australian on his current form, do you think?
Absolutely.
Yeah, he's winning the Coleman, isn't
he?
he?
To be fair, 10 goals against West Coast does
does get
inflate
you
it.
up
He
there.
is winning the
Yeah.
Coleman.
Yeah.
10 goals against West Coast.
If he wins the Coleman, though, surely he's All-Australian.
the Coleman medal winner has to be in the All-Australian side.
Yeah,
It just has to be.
Anyway, thought I'd brought that out there. And he's worth owning in fantasy, too. I think he's snapped up in most
A bit like
leagues.
Pritis
Anyway.
winning the Brownlow and not making the All-Australian team.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah. Anyway, I just thought I'd throw that
But
in there.
he can score really well because he kicks bags of goals.
Yeah,
So obviously it won't happen every week.
Yeah, exactly. But, this is you're playing the top team and you're still kicking a bag of 5. Like, that's a pretty good day.
North Melbourne next week as well.
Hopefully feast on that for you, sir. Ben Keys, 90 points. Obviously I didn't see it, but all the new messaging everywhere has told me that he just followed Dacos around all day. That got him a 90, so that was fine. But is he a week-to-week proposition, or is there any concern with his scoring, even if he's doing some tagging jobs? What are your thoughts?
I think he is a week-to-week proposition. Obviously, every time they play Collingwood, he's going to tag him.
Yeah.
So we know that. But, he is a week-to-week proposition. I think the Crows have shown they can tag. They're a high tagging team.
Yeah.
I think Keys has played a little bit more midfield than I thought he would this year.
Yeah, especially in the last few weeks.
Yeah, I think his experience, I guess, in there, and he's always been a one that's found the ball with ease.
Yeah.
So it does work well in the centre bounce.
So what do you think he's good for an average from this point onwards? So
it's really tough to say, I suppose.
Does he go 90 plus from here?
I'll say maybe sort of 85, a little bit less than 90 plus.
Yeah, I can see 85.
I just can't trust him to go 90 plus. But absolutely, like you have games where he scores 120 and whatnot. But I'll go low. I'll temper it a bit. I'll go 85.
Yeah, okay. I'll be happy with that if he does score that.
Probably
from now
take
on.
that.
Yeah, absolutely. Given he's got forward status now, might not keep it for next year though. Mitch Hinge had 83 points. He kind of comes in and out, but he's just got the right role for fantasy this year. How was his game?
Yeah, really good. I thought it was one of his best games he's played for the club. Maybe his best game.
About it today.
So I reckon really early. I think he had about 3 marks in the first 5 or 10 minutes off half back, and he just really suits. He's not a star.
Yeah.
But it just really suits the role in the team. And I think he's sort of been one that's been in and out a little bit.
Yeah, well, he played on the wing a lot last year.
Yeah.
But you kind of played so many players in that role.
Yeah, I think half-back is probably his spot because he's a good size and he can lock down and whatnot. And, Brodie Smith probably doesn't have too many years left in him, so maybe he takes on a bigger role because he's a nice kick generally from half-back. So, he can lock down, but I think he's actually a really important player for the Crows.
Yeah, seems like it now. Yeah, and like I said, plays that role pretty well. But anyway, we'll move on to the last game of the round. That was the Gold Coast game against Hawthorn. Braden Fiorini. Now, we talk about this guy so often on this podcast and in the classic world these days because we know what he's capable of. He scored 115 in this game, but I guess the noticeable thing was he was off the wing and back in the guts. So CBA shot up through the roof. I think he was the most improved CBA player this week. If you look at the CBA stats on our website, we know this happens, but what do you think actually happened? Like, what is the reasoning behind him playing on the wing for the last 6-7 weeks and then just being an inside mid this week? Well, what do you think happened? Is it just embarrassment out of getting smashed by Carlton the week before and just trying something different?
Who knows? Like, often Gold Coast have a couple of these decisions every year where just something happens and you just don't know why it does. But I don't know. Fiorini's obviously always been able to score like this, but he's the first one to get dropped, isn't he?
Yeah, he's a whipping boy too.
Feels like his career's just been a mix of, wing to dropped and then chuck him in the inside and then back out in the wing, and no doubt he'll be dropped soon probably. So, you can't trust him at all. But, he's a generally good scorer when he does go in there. It's just, it's just a week-to-week proposition with him.
Yeah, it's hard to tell. I think maybe they just want to roll their midfield a little bit deeper because I think they were kind of exposed the week before.
Yeah, they were. Yeah. It's a good point you mate. They were definitely exposed the week before. Anderson and Rao, when they couldn't get the job done, they fell away pretty quick.
The thing, took Miller's only a couple of weeks away though as well, so
that'd
that might
be
change
massive
things
for them.
Yeah,
particularly when they're looking to, maybe make the finals for the first time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Having him back in, who has barely played. I don't think he has played. So it's massive for him.
Because I guess the other indicator for that midfield mix-up was Sam Flanders coming into the side. So Sam Flanders is going nuts at VFL. I think he had like 160 odd last week.
Yeah.
But never gets that inside role at AFL level. comes in this week and gets that inside role, scores 94 points. So, yeah, I don't know, it's just crazy, first of all, that players can still come into AFL sides and not play the same role that they're playing in the twos each week.
It'd be really hard to adjust, I reckon. Not having ever been in that sort of system, but I can imagine
what Porter attributing a lot of their success this season to is instead of picking the next best player to come in, picking the guy who's most suited in that role type thing.
I think, that's interesting. It makes sense, really, doesn't it?
Yeah. So anyway, it's good to see Gold Coast actually employ the same tactic and actually play Sam Flanders in a spot where he can get some fantasy points. So yeah, he's another one to look at if they keep rolling with that deep midfield. But I think, Took Miller's going to affect someone, if not multiple people, coming back into that side as well. So
Flanders and Fiorina are in the firing line straight away.
It might be short-lived, but good to see anyway. Given as well because Flanders does have that forward status. Ben Ainsworth, 110 points. So he had 89 last week, and he's been playing a bit of a different role. It's just further up the ground than it was in the previous 9 rounds or whatever or 10 rounds before their bye, 11 rounds, whatever it was, 13, I don't know. But anyway, since those 2 Darwin games, he was playing this role, but the weather was just so gross and shit that just slippery that he couldn't actually score up there because no outside types can. As soon as he's come back from there and actually playing the same role in kind of drier conditions, he's actually put up 2 really good scores. So he's one to flag with a bit of a role change. Because he is attending some wing attendances, what I call them, so the guys that are actually lining up on the wing at centre bounces. But if you look at his game as well, he's getting the ball a lot further up the ground as well, kind of working up to the back flanks and pockets and things like that, taking some marks up there too in the chip around. So yeah, Ben Ainsworth is a forward, definitely worth consideration in your keeper leagues. Usually goes around the 70 average, and he's finally got the average back to 70 after a few good weeks. So, yeah.
He's always been someone that can sort of push up into an on-ball role. But I remember...
Well, he used to play on the ball early days.
Absolutely. When he was drafted, he was a sort of a pocket rocket sort of midfielder. Just hasn't really come on that way in the AFL.
He's too good as a pressure forward as well. But, like I said, playing further up the ground, and 2 good scores, it's a good indicator. Plus, we've seen about 4 weeks of this role was well enough to know it's probably going to stick around. It's just that, the first 2 weeks were just in shitty conditions where no one could score. So, it's just good to see that there's a bit of a consistency going on there, and I think owners would be happy. Hopefully it continues. Comes against Collingwood this week, though, so it might be a different story. Moving on. Last tip of the cap to Malcolm Roses as well. 3 goals, 83 points, but look pretty comfortable kicking snags up there. Good one to seal it late. On to some Hawks. Jarman Impey, 108 points. That's officially too good for the podcast. Didn't think I'd see the day.
Jarman Impey, too good for the podcast. Good on him. Good on you, Jarman.
Now, do you think this is... I personally don't think it's a Sicily factor. I think that affects someone like Scrimshaw, who we'll talk about next. That's the guy who's getting the bump there, I think. Because we saw Impey score huge last week with Sicily in the side. And then I think against Port Adelaide earlier in the season, a few weeks ago, he just went massive in that game as well. So... I feel like he is kind of the main get out of defence now, the run and dash type out of defence.
Yeah.
But then he's also kind of, say, Hawthorn been setting up where they usually have loose men in defence as well. So this week it was Will Day, was just taking them all. But then they'll always go laterally to someone else. And quite often it felt like a lot of I think the second or third quarter it was just Will Day to Impey goes each time.
I mean, his 2 biggest traits are his speed and his ball use, and playing a half-back role, he's allowed to sort of use those 2 traits to advantage and sort of damage the opposition, work it forward. So it really makes sense from Sam Mitchell's perspective to play him in a role where they can feed him the ball, and he can get the best opportunities.
Breaks
for him.
A few lines. So.
Yeah, he does. Yeah. So a young side, he's got an experienced head, so you'd think he'd be able to make good decisions with the ball too. So
coming into his prime, he's 27 now, I think. So. Yeah. No, Impey's, like I said, too good for the podcast. A few people brought him in Classic, and I'm very happy as well. So people even saying thanks to me for it. But I think it was mentioned.
There you go.
Mentioned
credit where it's due.
Mentioned on many a podcast. It wasn't just here. But anyway. Jack Scrimshaw, what we just talked about, 108 points. I reckon he was the biggest beneficiary of Sicily being out, because we saw the year that Sicily missed with was it ACL? Yeah, with his knee. Scrimshaw had an awesome year that year. So I think he's the main beneficiary. Luckily, he's got 2 more weeks of this, essentially. But I think he scored okay last week with Sicily in the side too. So it's just good to see him getting a game, because he's actually a good fantasy scorer.
Yeah, he is when he's out there. He's great. I think at the start of the year, he was out of the best 22. And it is good to see him back in there, because he does have good potential.
Absolutely. And last one I mentioned is Seamus Mitchell, 91 points. This kid is kind of I don't think he was on anyone's radar at the start of this year, and he's come a long way. That halfback role for him is fantasy friendly, but he's actually playing it well too. And just hats off to him, I guess.
Yeah, no one would have known his name, really, apart from Hawthorn. Probably some Hawthorn fans wouldn't have known who he is at the start of this year.
Knowing Hawthorn fans.
Yeah, no, exactly. But no, he's obviously part of their future plans and deservedly so.
Yeah. They've actually got quite a few halfback flankers that are good.
They're building a few really good ball users, and Sam Mitchell was one of them, so it's not a surprise, really.
Yeah. Anyways, that wraps up the breakout tracking for this week. If you want to support the podcast, please sign up as a member. The membership support keeps this podcast going week in, week out through the season. If you do sign up as a member, we'll give you back some resources to use for your fantasy and keep league sides. That includes our CBA analysis numbers, kick-in numbers, state league fantasy scores, and access to the breakout tracker. Each week, we read out 10 gold members' names. Tommy, I'm going to give you the honours this week. I'm going to stitch up here.
All right. No,
I think they're all pretty easy, actually.
No worries.
Yeah, have a go.
All right. Thank you, Andrew Hubbard, Josh Healy, Shannon Page, Imran Church, Gavin Thompson, Mark Barber, George Donatsits. Oh, I hope I got that one. That's a tricky one.
I reckon you got it on. Yeah.
Mitch Grivens, Callum Harkins, and Alex Streckbein.
There's a few names here I've been reading out for a few years now, so you kind of get used to them and you get better.
I've gone all right there.
No, I reckon you've
just
done
quietly.
Well. No, done well. Tweet in if he's butchered your name. But anyways, at Tom M. Wyman, I reckon it is.
Yeah, someone like that.
Yeah. You can get into him there on Twitter. Anyway, let's get into the listener questions quickly and we'll wrap this show up. At Jerry Hello 3, I wonder if that's a Seinfeld reference.
I hope so.
Uncle Leo. He's asking us to rank the following players. I think wants to know Matt Roberts, Dev Robertson, Angus Sheldrick, Elijah Hollins, and Matthew Johnson. I really had trouble picking between Johnson and Sheldrick. What do you think?
Yeah,
because they're my 1 and 2.
Yeah, it's tough. Probably Johnson plays a more consistent game, I'd say.
Yeah.
But Sheldrick, like we probably mentioned,
just shown so much.
Has shown a lot and scores really quickly when he's on there.
Yeah.
I think Johnson's probably the safer of the picks.
Yeah, I think I've got Johnson as a safer, but I reckon Sheldrick has more potential.
I'd agree with that, yeah.
Yeah.
If you want to draft them in terms of potential, he'd be top.
Yeah. So Johnson and Sheldrick, 1 and 2. Then I've got Matt Roberts because that Dev Rob, like Elijah Hollins, has just gone missing. So
yeah,
I don't really know what's happening with him.
I wonder whether he'll probably be one to seek a trade or something in there. But
and if Dev Rob seeks a trade, it might change. But I've got Matt Roberts in there because he's only out because of the injury, I guess, at the moment. But Sydney were actually finally starting to play him as well. So I wouldn't have been surprised if he got a good run of it. He could have been doing what Sheldrick's doing now. You know what I mean?
Matty's a known scorer.
Yeah.
Throughout his junior career. So, yeah.
So I've got So it's Roberts, Sheldrick, and then I'm going. Johnson, Sheldrick, then Roberts. All right, yeah, Dev Rob because he's actually playing but just doing nothing. He's another one that gets traded. And Hollins is last for me out of that lot because, I just don't know what he's doing right now, to be honest. He's not even scoring in VFL. So, yeah, he might be like his mate Sharp and just end up in the abyss.
Absolutely.
Who knows? At Ralph opened, rank the available mids on who is the best options for this year. All right, so I've gone through and done his for him. I think it was, that's right. It was Shuey, Hewitt, Sloan, Mason Wood, and Perryman. So for the rest of this year, as long as he keeps his body right, I think Shuey is my number 1 out of those, purely because West Coast need a senior body like him to just do the hard work.
Yeah, someone's got to do the grunt stuff. Someone's got to stand up.
It's like him and Yo are just going to have so much of the pill, like just to kind of so they just don't get smacked. So as long as he stays fit, Shuey, I reckon he's the number 1 out of this list. Mason Wood's the next one I like at number 2.
Having a great year, Mason.
Yeah, and they plays that outside type, and he can get forward and kick a goal. I think he's keeping Billings out of the side, really, at the moment as well. So Mason Wood's probably 2 out of that list. I think Perryman can bounce back. Showed a few good scores this year. Can get the right role. I think he's been on the halfback a bit more this year where he kind of started.
Yeah, he has been more so halfback, and then a little bit of mid as well.
Yeah, but I trust him more than I trust Royce. Royce Sloan's good for an 80. Roy Sloan, Harry Perryman, flip a coin, I reckon, because Roy Sloan gets you 80 most weeks. George Hewitt's the guy that's just kind of faded away out of all of those. You always have those players that have that 1 year at their new club where they go really well, but he's kind of just he's just gone back to
sunken a bit.
He's just gone back to Sydney, George Hewitt, really, the same kind of player he was at Sydney.
Which is unfortunate because, like you said, he really did show good signs.
Probably doesn't help. Yeah, Collingwood, because, I forgot to mention here, but he's going for the win this year, so he's not fussed about age or anything like that. So, or what's happened this year, it's just going forward. So, yeah. So, anyway, I've got Shuey, Wood, probably Perryman, because I like him better for the future. I'd rather have him on my side. Sloan, and then Hewitt for Ralph Open there. At B34S3, is it finally Sam Flanders' season? We've touched on this. It could be, but Took Miller is the worrying thing.
Probably another false dawn, to be honest, which is unfortunate for Sam. But
and a very similar
before, haven't we?
Yeah, we have. Very similar question here from Jeremy Graham. Just for Dossie, he reckons, is it officially Fiorini season now? Again, rinse and repeat with Flanders. I don't know what happened when Took Miller comes in. But it does feel, like I said, it does feel like they wanted to roll a bit deeper in the midfield, just how kind of exposed they got when they did come up against the dip midfield.
But, don't know if those two guys are really the answer they're looking for.
Yeah, and Hawthorn are, you've got to remember, they are a bottom four side. So even though they have been playing some good footy, but away from home, let's see what happens against Collingwood this week. Here's a good question for you while we've got you on the show here, Tommy. Jim Bob Holder wants to know, has there been any goss from Adelaide to explain why Sam Berry has been crap in the Magoos, let alone playing in the senior team? What's happening with Berry this season?
I don't really have any goss on it, but he's always been one, like, I remember, I think it was earlier this year where he was getting more tackles and disposals. Like, he's a gun tackler, which is obviously good for fantasy. But in that Crows side, there's no one that he's, I don't know who he comes in for.
Yeah.
Obviously when Sloan eventually hangs him up, there might be a role there for him. Shuffle the jet chairs a bit around.
He's still averaging 9 tackles at Sandful level.
I mean, that's what he does. That's him. He's a tackling machine, obviously, but just needs to get his hands on the ball a bit more often. And it probably lacks a little bit of damage as well with it.
I watch Neil Sandful. Being a Port Adelaide supporter, we have a very bitter history with their SANFL. But so I don't watch it. But do you think that they play last touch? They don't have throw-ins. Do you think that affects the amount of stoppage numbers and tackles and stuff like that? So
it has to have an impact because it's a last touch rule. I don't know.
Don't get me wrong. I think it's actually I think in the AFL they should bring it in.
Yeah,
because,
I don't mind it, to be honest.
Yeah, it quickens up the game. Like, it just gets the ball pinging back forward each way. But also as well, it just brings out, like, what the hell is insufficient intent? And who are the umpires to decide what a player's intent was?
God, giving up trying to interpret the rule.
And there's just so, like, it's fine. They've getting a lot better at paying more free kicks from it this year to get the game moving. But you just see so many inconsistencies week in, week out.
And
like you see one that blatantly comes off the side of the boot and it's like, insufficient intent.
And the players they'll cut to the players and they'll just be laughing, shaking their head. Like,
just make it black and white, clear cut. Make it last touch rule, and it gives the same thing. Like it gets the ball moving quicker, stops those kind of contest after contest.
But guys like Berry and stoppage players, I guess like Matt Crouch as well,
they get affected by that.
They really get affected by it.
So it's hard to really judge it as well. A little bit maybe. Like I said, he's still averaging 9 tackles a game though, so that's what he did at AFL. Wasn't
I have no doubt he'll be back at some stage. Probably just needs to find little bit more.
Needs to add another string to his
does.
Yeah, pretty much. Anyways, that is the end of the podcast for this week. Get around us on our socials at Keeper League Pod on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube and TikTok. Make sure you get around our sponsors, Game Day Squad, and make sure you support the podcast by becoming a member if you wish to do so. I also got one thing quickly at the end. A user on TikTok at AUFCFan1 wants a shout out on the podcast, so there's your shout out, mate.
There you go. Big shout out to, I assume, Adelaide United fan.
Yeah,
so
I think
good
so.
on you.
Yeah. Big fan of the Reds, so good to see.
Go the Reds.
Anyways, Tommy, what are you doing with yourself? Anything you want to plug? You want to plug your local newspaper that you work for?
Why not? Go the Fluto Sun. So, anyone living down the Fluto, get a hold of it. So,
read your articles.
Yeah, exactly.
There'll be a few people down there.
Just flip the paper over, go to the back, start from the back. I do.
Stuff.
So, read 5 pages of footy this week.
Is that jumper what I think it is?
This is Rookie Me, absolutely.
Yeah.
Champs are just wrapping up. SA obviously had a pretty poor national championships, but head over to Rookie Me and get all your analysis.
Basically between Rookie Me and about 2 or 3 other websites, it's where I get all my rookie data and analysis from. So definitely check that out. It's a good time of year with all these championship games going on, and the under 18 stuff. Was there a state game on the weekend as well?
Yeah, there was. SA sort of finished their national championships against WA with a loss. So,
a few future fantasy prospects to come out of it, I'm sure.
For sure, definitely.
Anyways, thanks for listening for another week, and we'll talk to you soon. See ya. Boom.
Sweet.
See you, streamers.